Welcome everybody to the March 20th, 2025 edition of the Technical Advisory Council of the Confidential Computing Consortium. A belated happy St. Patrick's Day to our Irish colleagues, and for those still celebrating Ramadan, happy Ramadan. We are an open and collaborative community. Everybody on this call is welcome to jump into the conversation and contribute constructively, just as you are welcome to engage on our open source projects. We have a code of conduct, and so you should be able to find that in any of our repositories. If you've got questions about that, you can always ask people that you see here in the TAC. We also abide by the Linux Foundation's antitrust policy notice. You can find that on linuxfoundation.org/antitrust-policy. Lots of stuff to cover in today's meeting. We have two annual updates from Oklum and VerTE. It looks like the workload identity SIG proposal has matured, and so we can talk about that and see if people are ready for a vote. And then we potentially have our first project ready to move to the emeritus stage. I have not seen completion of some action items on that, so we might end up shelving that for this week. And with all of that going on, we do not have space in today's agenda for a tech talk. Anything else people were expecting to have under discussion today? Okay, well, with that, we can do a quick run through the voting members. Again, everybody's got a voice here, but if we need to vote on something formally, and we tend to avoid that as much as possible, we do need to make sure that we have quorum for that. So I saw Paul on. Thanks for joining, Paul. Catherine, thanks for joining. I am on. Henry, no, Henry. Thanks for joining, Alec. Fritz, thanks for joining, particularly with GTC going on. Yash, thanks for being on. And I don't see Mingshen or Dale or Bob. So I count 6 on my fingers. I got that right. So I think we are at quorum if we do need to move to a vote. Excellent. Okay, and if you're new to the community, haven't had a chance to introduce yourself, please feel free to pop off of mute and let us know how you prefer to be addressed, where you're joining from, and what it is about confidential computing that interests you. I know we have a few people joining from projects to give their updates, so you can also introduce yourself at the time of doing your update if you prefer.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Hui Chunyang, and I'm a senior software engineer from Ant Group. And today I'm representing Oklum team to take our annual review. Yeah.
Excellent.
And this is the second time I joined this meeting together with my colleague, Duan Ran, who is a maintainer of the Oklum project.
Well, I'm so glad you guys were able to make it, especially given how late at night it is.
It's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, if anybody else would like to introduce themselves as we go on, feel free to do that. Last time, just to recap, thanks for people who reviewed the minutes, and I think those may have been merged, but we had an annual update from the certifier framework. We talked about our liaison responsibilities as TAC members and decided to continue doing that. I don't remember if we had a little bit of discussion or not on the workload identity. And I also don't know that we actually discussed OKRs. Don't remember. Is that accurately reflected there?
We did not discuss the OKR, so yeah.
Okay.
that could be-
I think that's something we kind of thought about doing, but didn't get around to. I think we must have had some discussion on the workload identity topic. At any rate, it's helpful for people to review the minutes. So what we formally log is in the governance repo. So next week we have a governing board meeting, and the TAC always gets a slide or two or three for things to update the board on. And I think the significant things that I'll be keeping them up to speed on is the trustworthy workload identity effort. Maybe touch on the OpenHCL proposal that we had through the TAC a while ago. And then I had let them know that we were revisiting the liaison's responsibility, and so I'll close the loop on that. Are there any other topics that people really want elevated at the board, or questions that people had for the governing board?
I have a questions to the mentors now that they're mentioned here, but it's not to the board, so I'll hold back if someone has something to the board.
I have something which is kind of in the other direction, really, which is that one of the things the board asked recently was whether there are any people who have examples of ad tech use cases that they'd like to share. So if anyone has any examples of that they'd like to talk about, the GB would love to hear about them.
So Mike, for people that maybe aren't as familiar with ad tech and the efforts to make that more privacy aware.
Brief intro, I suppose. So ad tech is advertising tech, and there are a number of laws around the world, including GDPR, but far from limited to it, which limit exactly what information you're allowed to have or allowed to share about particular consumers or people to whom you are advertising, or that the platform may have or the advertiser may have. And one way of dealing with these privacy concerns is based on confidential computing. And it's we had someone, who was it, from, I think it was Mike Ferrin-Jones actually, from Intel at the outreach the other day, saying that it's Intel's third highest use case or something, after financial and healthcare. So it's bigger than you might expect, and we'd love to have some information about it. So that's it. Is that helpful?
I found it so. Any questions from anyone else? One related topic is we have an analysis of GDPR and confidential computing for purposes of compliance. That's not strictly a TAC output, as it really called upon more people with compliance background than it did the TAC background. So that's been operating as a separate effort, and that is approaching a final draft. So that'll also be before the board next week, I hope. There's been a few notes about that. So if anybody needed to get connected to that a little bit late in the game, we can still facilitate that. All right, Fritz, I think it's over to you for your mentor question.
So I'm just seeing that all three mentees are on track, but I honestly, so it was mentioned, I think, and we had quick discussions about it, but I don't really know what they're even working on. So would it be possible, or might it make sense for these mentees to join the TAC for, can be like a combined session, low effort style description of what they did? I don't want to call it presentation, because usually, especially mentees and folks over prepare for these and make it like a big thing where it shouldn't be. But might it make sense to have, like, I don't know, a prepare one TAC time slot for them, where all three can come by and give a recapitulation of what they did and how they liked it? I think that would be interesting to at least me.
Yes, I like that, and we can absolutely do that.
Are they all on the same schedule? Because then we can just do it in their last week or something like this.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're all served in the same week, so.
Okay.
So yeah, yes, they're all on the same schedule. We'll finish at the same time. And one of the things that we've asked them is when they're done, they should also write a blog post about their experience and what they've learned, and that we want to publish on the website. So I really like the idea. So we are at the halfway mark, and I just checked this morning. I got feedback from all three mentors that their mentees are on track. So I'm going to send out their halfway mark evaluation information for them to submit their claims for funding for their hard work. And then it's just some interesting information I want to share about the value of mentorships is I heard last week in the CNCF mentorship workshop that in 15 terms of mentorship, they actually got 15 permanent project maintainers developed, basically a new maintainer every 3 months, which was previously a hard thing to get, and now they just keep
Nice.
on rolling them up. So to encourage the projects to make use of this.
That's fantastic. And I was able to hear all of that, Rian. Your audio is a little bit light, just in case you've got a separate microphone that's picking up. Okay, great. So yeah, we should definitely get them on the agenda for whenever it's convenient with the end of the mentorship schedule.
Yeah,
So,
Shriyan, do you need me for that, or are you handling it alone? Should I ping you guys for that, or?
And no, we'll add it to the TAC coordination
Okay.
notes meeting on Monday. So
Awesome, thanks.
I also, if we're going to talk about workload identity, actually, if possible, to do it in the first hour of this meeting, because then I have to drop.
Sure. Yeah, I've got you slotted right after Oakland,
Okay.
which is our next topic.
Great.
Yeah, so
Sorry,
this,
one last thing on mentorship. Yash, I think you go with that one.
yeah, so because as Rian mentioned, we're at the halfway mark of the first term. Essentially, this will be a right time to reach out to projects to start thinking about term 2 to recruit more mentees and think about project ideas for term 2. So I'm going to reach out to the projects as well. And if we have 2 project maintainers here, so start thinking about project ideas and how mentees could help you. You could talk to the existing mentors and what their experience has been. So yeah, so call out to the CCC projects to start thinking of ideas. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anything else? All right, so keep that in mind, TAC members, to reach out through your networks for that and help connect people. Ideally, the project that you are the liaison for, that would be a good thing that you could do as a liaison, is help recruit mentees for them and work with them to come up with appropriately scaled projects that help the project, as well as give something that's consumable for somebody earlier in their career here. All right, so just to flip forward real quick, we're going to hear from Oakland, and then we'll talk about the workload identity proposal, and then the VRT-E review. And then I don't think we're going to talk about Veracruz today, because I did not see any response from the Veracruz maintainers. All right, with that, I'm going to stop sharing so that our colleagues with
Okay.
Oakland can present.
Yeah. Thank you. So I will start sharing.
And TAC members, I think I sent the link in the agenda so that you've got the shortcut to the things that we like to see in the reviews, in addition to anything technical that Hui Chunyang wants to present.
Yeah, maybe let me close my, just a second. Okay, can you guys see my screen now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So my name is Hui Chunyang, and today I'm very glad to be here and talking about our progress of our Alcom project. So in the first part, I will make a brief introduction about Alcom. And in the second part, I will talk about the progress of our project since our last annual review. And at last, I will talk about our current status by answering several questions required by the tech team. So Alcom is a memory-safe multi-process library OS, specifically catering for T scenarios. And the mission of Alcom is to empower everyone to run every application inside the TE. And we are keeping on trying to make it true. Alcom project was first created in 2019 by Ant Group, which is a leading fintech company in China. And Alipay is one of our products. So Alcom was originated from an idea to explore the possibility to make multitasking library OS more efficient and secure. And the paper was accepted by Apollos 2020. Then in 2021, Alcom was donated by Ant Group to CCC. Besides Intel SGX, Alcom is also compatible with other T platforms, including HyperEnclave, which is a software T solution based on virtualization, and Intel TDX. Today, I also have some update on Alcom's TDX support. Okay, so here comes the second part. So it has been a year since our last review. During the last year, we majorly focused on two things. First is to keep dedicating to SGX and HyperEnclave T platforms for our internal and external customers. And we can call this Alcom Legacy from now on. And second is to invest more on VM-based TE, especially TDX. And we started our Alcom for TDX project. So for Alcom Legacy, we recently just released our new version, 0.3.1.0. So these are the highlights of this release. Firstly, our refined and polished IOU ring-based network I/O finally arrived, which can bring more than 40% performance improvement in multiple benchmarks, and users can easily enable it in the configuration file. And coming next, for the file I/O, we support ext2 and MLS disk, which brings both performance gain and more security. I will elaborate more on this later. Also, due to the upgrade of Intel SGX SDK, we can easily get the performance gain by Intel protected FS update. Based on our evaluation, there is 50% plus performance improvement based on FIO benchmark. What's more, we have added new support for Ubuntu 22.04 and released our new image and the bin packages based on that. And together, glibc is also upgraded to 2.35. And for deployment demos, we added support for Flink running with Kubernetes deployment. A little deeper inside, let's take a look on Alcom's network I/O improvements. So traditionally, performing I/O in Alcom requires extra overhead because it needs to switch the context for trusted world and untrusted world. Thus, Alcom is not very friendly for I/O-bound applications. But with IOU ring, Alcom creates an untrusted shared ring buffer between the user space and the host kernel. IO request is submitted directly by writing the shared memory and handled by the host kernel by a host kernel thread instead of doing OCall and context switch. So previously, Occlum's IO related host calls are blocking and are passively woken up by the host kernel when the IO is done. But with IO ring, we don't block and sleep. We are actively polling for the IO completion. Thus, for IO request submission and completion, there are no context switch needed and highly improve the throughput. With Occlum's syscall implementation, the application's blocking IO calls will be transformed to IO ring request in the network subsystem. So we help our user to use IO ring transparently in order to cover the performance costs that SGX must pay. With this feature, the iPerf3 benchmark shows 123 performance increase. So this feature is officially released in 0.31.0, and users can choose to enable this feature in the configuration file. And for file I/O, besides performance improvements by upgrading Intel SGX SDK and Intel Protected FS, we also have a self-developed file I/O stack for better performance and security. Let me introduce our new ext2 and MLS disk solution. As some of you may know, the Intel Protected FS is not quite good at data write, and especially random write, which is because of its Merkle hash tree architecture, making single write update expand to multiple block update and decrease the write throughput. MLS disk just caught this drawback of Intel Protected FS and architect its own design. It uses an LSM tree-like structure and leverage cache to make random write sequential, which brings blazingly fast write performance. In the meantime, it also provides the same functionality as Intel Protected FS in data encryption and data integration. And in our evaluation, the FIO random write shows 16 times performance improvement, and the sequential write shows 5 times improvement as well. What's more, it provides better security in atomicity when crashing. So the data will always be rolled back to previous sync point from the sync operation of the upper layer. So the team just wrote a paper about this design and got accepted by FAST 25. So in the next part, I will talk about our progress in TDX support. We started this project because we see that the T technology is developing, and due to the constraints of process-based TEE like SGX, VM-based TEE seem to have a brighter future. Compared to SGX, which developers can only operate in Ring 3, TDX gives a full VM. Linux is always the first choice due to its mature community and enormous number of users. However, we consider it to be an option, but not the final answer. We officially started the project on February last year. So we officially started the project on February last year. We defined the target of the project to leverage legacy Occlum's product level code base and support more functionalities to run as a general OS. And plus, we can easily achieve smaller TCB and fewer memory safe issues with our previous experience. In this way, we want to achieve multiple TE platform support with one single code base. Meanwhile, here comes the challenges. Oaklum has a deep dependency on Intel SGX SDK for TRTS and Rust SGX SDK for Rust STD. So we want to run Oaklum from ring 3 to ring 0, and we will have to rewrite our dependency. And second, Oaklum legacy with unikernel architecture has a lot of constraints itself. One of the most well-known is no fork support, which causes a great obstacle for many of our potential users. However, the reason behind this is not complex. So for an enclave application, it can only manipulate virtual address. And Oaklum legacy also, as an enclave application, uses its single address space to support multiple processes. Thus, it cannot copy the address space required by fork. However, with ring 0 capabilities, Oaklum can now manipulate page table and can support real multiprocess by providing the whole address space for each process. The last challenge is OCall. Same as other enclave applications, Oaklum uses OCall to get out of the trusted world and utilize untrusted host to do something for it. But when running in TDX, how to achieve that? So this is the architecture of Oaklum TDX, and at the top, it inherited most of the code of Oaklum legacy, with several modifications. It is Oaklum kernel service module at the top, and this module does nothing but provide kernel service for user space, including syscall handle and syscall implementation, user space, memory management, user thread and process management, signals, file systems, and network subsystem. And beneath this, it is Rust T SDK, which provides kernel STD or SDK layer, this layer. So it provides a Rust STD environment so that Oaklum kernel service module can easily write Rust code to complete its job. Besides, it also provides more functionality that Oaklum kernel service module can directly request. For example, kernel thread management, locking primitives, OCall APIs, and etc. And at the bottom, it is TRTS, TD TRTS, which is the runtime to manage all hardware or platform-specific functionalities, including physical memory management, page table management, kernel space memory management, thread scheduler, kernel boot process, interrupt initialization and handling, and etc. What's more, TD-TRTS implements the OCall handle by using virt.io. The main design is to have multiple shared queues lying between the guest ring 0 and host ring 3 based on virt.io. The guest ring 0 submits requests and the host user space application keeps polling for the request and handle this by asking host Linux to do it. So with our layered architecture, we can reuse Oaklum legacy code as much as we can. And with page table support, we can add support for fork and one step further, we also added page cache support and shared memory. And with virt.io, we support OCall like host calls and get rid of TCP IP stack, keeping it out of our TCP. For now, we have successfully booted on both normal VM and TDX CVM, and we have supported most of the syscalls and capabilities Oculum legacy support. We also support unmodified Bash, Redis, and Nginx. And by the way, it is the first time that Oculum runs an Nginx server successfully. Previously, Nginx was a pain in the ass for Oculum legacy because of fork. And we are keeping working to polish the code, and I think we will open source it in the near future. Okay, so come to the last part. And so for the technical charter progression status and project license, there is no update. And for the budget allocation, I don't think we have any or use any. So the answer is no. And at last, for the OpenSSF badge, it is still an ongoing work, and let's work closely and get it done. And that would be all for today. Many thanks to everyone.
That's a great update. It looks like you guys have made a lot of progress with a lot of features.
Yeah.
Turn things over to the other TAC members for questions, particularly making sure that we covered everything in the annual update section from the governance repo, or any other technical questions that the community has.
Yes, I've got a question and a comment as well. Firstly, yeah, great work. Really impressed with everything that's going on here.
Thank you.
I recognize some of the design decisions that we were making with NARCs going on. The main question I had really was, particularly in the IO ring and in the file system, is any of that work, do you think, that can be used by other projects? Or is it very closely attached to the Oculum design?
Yeah, so let me go back to my slides. So I think actually only the network IO uses IOU ring, and I think it is deeply coupled with the Oculum's other module. However, the EXT2 and MLS disk is not coupled closely with other Oculum modules, and I think so. As far as I know, MLS disk is open source, and you can evaluate and try it on your own project. And I think I think you can also, if you need the FS, you can also use the EXT2 RS, which is a rewritten project based on EXT2, just in Rust language. Yeah.
You're muted, Mike.
Yeah, so I was just saying that maybe Hightower could add it to his list of things to look at for applicability to other projects. That's really interesting. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, getting Nginx to run in Oculum, that's pretty cool. I'm curious. I'm thinking about how you get the keys from whatever your key management system is into the Oculum T securely. Is that something that you can explain to someone who's just an application level plumber, or is it beyond my reach?
Sorry, so I didn't quite follow. So did you talk about the Oculum TDX or for Oculum Legacy?
I'm thinking of the new one where you mentioned that you got Nginx actually running inside of Occlum. Did I hear that right?
Sorry, pardon?
Did you get Nginx running inside of Occlum?
Nginx.
The web server, I think people pronounce
Oh
it.
yeah,
different ways,
Nginx.
but-
Yeah. Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just make Nginx running inside the Occlum. Yeah.
So I'm wondering how you got keys securely through the host OS into Occlum for use by Nginx.
So we didn't quite design the the security flow like key management. We just evaluate that Nginx can be running without any modification inside Occlum for TDX. And we just use Nginx to evaluate our functionalities.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. That's a great use case.
Yeah. So for the key management and the key flow, we need to redesign that, and that is like a more upper layer service. So Occlum is working like an operating system. Okay.
Right. Got it. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, awesome job
Thank
getting
you.
a high level application like that to work in Occlum. That
Thank
shows
you.
a ton of progress and general use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think for color for other people, one of the challenges with Nginx is that it forks a bunch, and normally forking within an enclave is at least expensive, if not carrying other problems, because you don't want to copy memory spaces around. So it's seems like a simple thing to do outside of a trusted execution environment is sort of a non-trivial thing.
Yes.
Mike?
Yeah, so the other thing was I wondered if there were any use cases or users of Occlum who you were able to talk about. Is it being used in production at all by anyone?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So Occlum has many customers, both internally and externally. And for internally customers, many applications. Most of the scenarios, we can run like Spark and PyTorch and Flink. Those are the use cases that have a product and in Ant Group. And for external customers, I'm not quite sure what they use, but Occlum with Spark is a very popular use cases in the community. Yes.
That's great. I would encourage people who are using it to submit papers and to conferences. I think that would be very interesting. So please encourage your users also to get involved either with with this group or in submitting papers. I think that would be really interesting.
Yes. Oh yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe one last question from me. At one point, Tate Tian was a liaison from the TAC. Sometimes we call that a mentor from the TAC to the Occlum project. Is Tate still engaged with you?
So he is still in Ant Group, but he is in charge of a new project, and I don't think he has much time on Occlum anymore.
Okay.
but yeah, but I don't know what's his responsibility in the CCC.
So yeah, and I don't think I've seen him in a meeting recently, but one of the services that we want to provide from this TAC at the CCC is connection, so that you're familiar with
Okay.
services that are available. Since you're a CCC project, we can help fund things like your CI, conference opportunities, like we'll have a presence at the Confidential Computing Summit this year. Other things like that. We want to make sure that you're connected with things as a CCC project. And so we'll probably have to recruit another member of the TAC to be in connection with you.
I'd include RSA as well, of course. If there aren't people who, or Oakland folks who would like to be at RSA, we have a booth there that we'd be very happy to have people appearing at.
Okay, it's good to know. I think I will talk it to my boss and see if anything we need and we can do. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think
Thank you.
we are on schedule to switch over to Mark. So thanks once again to Hui Chung and other collaborators
Yeah,
at
thank you.
Oakland. It's one of
you.
our longest projects. And I know that actually one other adoption note is that it's used heavily within CNCF confidential containers as the
Yes,
SGX
yes.
side of things there. So that's
Yes.
another adoption angle, which I think is a great one, with it being an open source project to another open source project that has downstream adoption, like in Red Hat OpenShift containers. OpenShift sandbox containers, I think is the term. Okay, over to Mark to talk about the trustworthy workload identity SIG. I think given how little time there is before the top of the hour, I'm going to trust that people have had ample opportunity over the last few weeks to have read through the charter. So I won't ask that we read through it again, but maybe I'll let Mark kind of warm us up with a couple points, and then we can go into discussion about engagement. So I'll want to hear how the other companies present here plan to be engaged. That's usually my biggest concern with a new initiative is it's always easy to kind of start something, but I want to make sure that people are on board to actually carry it through.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll keep it short. So I made a case previously that integration with workload identity is basically a table stakes requirement for broad confidential computing adoption. We'll definitely have what I call niche adoption for certain scenarios without it, but I believe if we're going to uplift existing application fleets to this, we need an architecture and an easy adoption path. Now, there are workload identity efforts out there. Space Aspire and Toto can go down the list. Whimsy, working group at the IETF, heard the case was Monday night Pacific time, Tuesday morning, and they are at this point kind of hostile to it for a couple of reasons. One is that it's not an IETF effort that is easily remediable, and the other one is they don't quite understand confidential computing, and third is there is now an existing and entrenching belief that workload identity requires some level of trust in the platform, and they don't mean hardware, they mean the software hosting the workload. And the time to engage to undo the damage, so to speak, is now. So again, I agree with Dan that ultimately the entities that will determine the success of this effort would be hyperscalers, right? And then the cottage industry of smaller vendors can follow. So that's the end of my pitch.
All right. Thanks, Yash, for dropping the link to the PR. So I asked Mark to move things from the Google Doc. So our best practice for a lot of the new documents or initiatives is get started in a format that people can make lots of big edits to and throw in new text. But as we start to get close to the asymptote on changes, then it's best to go into change control. And ultimately, we want to have everything formally reflected in the governance repo. So there's a PR there with the text that you will have previously seen in the Google Doc. What I'd like to do now is kind of go maybe one by one through TAC members and see what their plans are for engagement. So on my screen, I'm just going to flip back to our roll call slide and I think go down the board. I think we do not yet have Nathaniel on still. So next in the order would be Paul Howard for ARM.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Dan. Hi, everyone. Yes, we're very interested in this work. We absolutely do want to stay engaged. We already are engaged. So one of the peers in my team is Yogesh, who has been attending the meetings and I think has also contributed to the charter as well. So yeah, this is a topic that's definitely very interesting for us. We would certainly sign up to stay involved.
Great. Great, and I appreciated him representing this at the meeting earlier this week. Catherine for Google.
Yes, same here. We're certainly very interested in this work. It has a lot of implications on some of our product offerings. Unfortunately, the meeting time changed, so I was not able to make the meetings anymore for the past 2 meetings. But yeah, certainly very interested. We want to stay engaged.
Excellent. Okay. So I'm next alphabetically for companies, and from Intel's side, Ned Smith has been engaged on this and intends to continue to be engaged. He also represents us in different IETF forums, so I think that'll also be of use there. And then we've got a few other collaborators within Intel that work on trustworthy builds and other sorts of software supply chain integrity. So this is something of interest to us, and we plan to contribute as well. I think we do not have Meta present yet with Henry or Kevin. So it's on to Microsoft and Alec.
Hey folks, and Mark, thanks for putting this together. I love the proposal. I feel with equal urgency that we need to get aligned with Whimsy. If we don't get aligned with Whimsy, then separating the idea of workload identity into warring camps makes no sense at all. So I want to participate. I've reached out to to the member on the attestation SIG. The problem that we have is one of bandwidth. So I think I'm supportive of this, but we would need to probably get a list of folks who were willing to actually participate in the discussions, come up with proposed meeting times, and figure out how we're gonna staff this before we just say we're gonna do it and then not have the folks that are actually actively participating in reviewing the doc. I'm unfortunately wasn't able to attend any of the meetings. Can you give me a sense, Mark, of how much participation there was and how much intent there is for folks to actually lean in and participate in the meetings and draft documents?
I think the participation has actually been very healthy, very healthy. We've had a good discussion. So we have the charter. Engineers being engineers, we've had an absolute overwhelming amount of detail discussed, including at the IETF. Actually took some feedback from those discussions, and we'll be doing informational drafts with them. So this is not the hard part. The hard part now, well, the next easy part is to list the list of requirements. That's almost done and needs to be revised. I'm going to move it into the special GitHub repo that we now have. The hard part is going to be figuring out how to achieve the myriad different like requirements and scenarios and compatibilities. So without talented engineers from Google, Microsoft, Intel, ARM, etc., helping out, we will be at the ideation stage. So this is where, again, I love to hear that you guys are on board, and you know, put some architects and engineers on it if this is to become a reality.
Yeah, I think that's a good set of questions that Alec has brought up. It's not necessary for all of us to participate in the form of showing up to the weekly or bi-weekly meetings. I think one of the things that we want to get organized is what are the different forms where we need to be present. And so we've talked about Whimsy and IETF, but there's all other software frameworks. So I think Google is active in Salsa, for example. So making sure that we connect the work that we do in the CCC through Catherine to maybe what her colleagues are working on with Salsa to have attestation recognized as a first-class data object. That's a kind of participation that doesn't necessarily imply showing up to a meeting, but does imply something with impact to our community. Google Project Oak, I think, is also relevant here. But each of our companies has a lot of different open source projects, and connecting those along with the standards work is, I think, part of the job here.
So I'm old enough to remember that Oak means Java. When you said Oak, I thought, what's Google doing with Java? But that really does show my age. So sorry. But I agree with everything you're saying. There are a number of ways to engage, and I think that what I'm hearing is that even if people don't have the resources to be able to put work into the people into the meetings every time, there will be the engagement. I've been to at least one of the meetings, and we got a lot done. I was very impressed. And Mark knows how to do this stuff. He's an old hand. Sorry,
Great.
Mark.
Well, Mike, now I'm wondering if I'm older because I've forgotten that association.
It was originally called Oak back in about 94, I think. So yeah, you got to be pretty.
So I'm curious, what's our strategy for getting this workload identity made mainstream? Is our strategy to first get it as an IETF adopted project and then bring the Whimsy folks on board and get alignment there, and then bring in Salsa and get alignment there? Or are we just gonna try to put out a different definition or additional requirements? And then I think that the danger there is customers will be forced to either pick and choose between various standards, which is the opposite of what we're trying to do at the Confidential Computing Consortium, or worst case scenario, we'll have our standard, which meets some Whimsy standards and some Whimsy some Salsa standards, but doesn't meet them all, and then customers will have a partially completed checklist depending on which standard they adopt.
So this is my definition of success. We don't develop a separate standard. We influence Spiffy and Whimsy, etc., to implement the few changes that we need in order to have confidential computing play in the space, right? Some of it is just influencing work. So I have now almost weekly conversations with Peter Castleman. He's the director of product at Spiral. And the next step is going to be, I'll be talking to him about one of his engineers about the Spiffy, what's called ambient mode, that would allow the replacement of what is today node attestation, which is incompatible with confidential computing, with something that is. So it's not going to be our working group that develops this code. It's going to be them listening to the feedback and getting the implementation in place that anyone who uses SPIFFE and Spire can have confidential computing do the right thing. With Whimsy, it may be immediately doing an informational draft, and perhaps in addition to the reference architecture that has provenance in it. So an additional claim that somehow tied to the trust domain, now talking Whimsy terminology, that would then allow a hook for somebody to evaluate trustworthiness of a credential, right? So the book conversation with them. So this is not a product. Okay, our output is getting others to do figure out what the minimum set is, right? So it's not too hard, and making it compatible and making it work. And then we can also influence some really important, outstanding work in the community, which is my really far North Star. But reverse proxies are a very difficult engineering problem when it comes to identity, how to traverse reverse proxies, and yet their regulatory requirement, how to deal with break and inspect, right? So that is the nature of the work. So I don't want Microsoft going and developing a separate stack for this, or Google. I want Whimsy to make the changes to the reference architecture that is compatible, figuring out what that is first, taking it to them, working through them, right? First, it's simply breaking through this lack of understanding, like your confidential computing is a separate technology. We trust the platform, go away. No, right? Here is a way to actually do it. And so, etc. That's how I see it.
Cool. All right. Well, I don't want to monopolize this discussion anymore. I think Microsoft supports this overall proposal. I will need to work with folks within our organization, especially members of Data Station SIG, to figure out how we can get participation.
Right. As well
Excellent.
as your identity system people. We need confidential identity. That's related but separate discussion. About 10 years old at this point.
We're working on that, Mark, and even internally, that's a tough problem.
Awesome, yeah.
Okay, let's move on to Fritz for NVIDIA.
So I personally won't be involved, but I have quite some folks who are interested and who plan to join the next weekly meeting, and then I think it'll be clear how and how much they can be involved. So I don't know about that. That's their side, but I think they want to be involved, and then we'll see what they can contribute.
The way I would love folks like you to be involved is when we have our compound workload. Some runs on CPU, some runs on GPU, and now we would like to do confidential inferencing. Right, when we're talking about agentic AI, like you guys are very big in the machine learning space, clearly, right? So figuring out how to do identity across, like that spans silicon for the same workload, it's kind of a key engineering challenge. So you don't need to solve all of it, just need to help us solve that part of it.
Yeah, so I think those people are interested and they'll join.
Great.
I think so far it has just been quite an hour, and because it's not my fun on the pot, let's say, but they will join. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
So the next meeting is Tuesday, right? So it's going to be Tuesday, 6 a.m. Pacific.
Pacific, correct.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. Yeah, they will welcome.
Okay. And then I'll also be curious, Fritz, if NVIDIA has other open source projects they're engaged in or secure software supply chain, just kind of being cognizant of those so we know if there's other intercept points.
Yeah, so there's GTC going on right now, but I will sync up with some folks after GTC to also finally plan some talks for the TAC.
Great. Incidentally, at GTC yesterday, just streaming, there was a great talk from Near Protocol on combining TDX and Hopper H100 and doing inferencing on a distributed network. So the kind of questions that Mark was raising, I know there's work out there, and people, I don't know what the streaming policy is with GTC, but when that becomes available, I think that's pretty topical for people who are here. Yash for Red Hat.
Yeah, so Red Hat supports this and will be participating. So we actually have a team working in the OpenShift organization, which is not my organization, that is adding SPIFFE Spire support to OpenShift. And the person who's actually working on this is a co-maintainer for Keylime as well. So he's the right overlap to be participating in this. His name is Michael Peters, and I think he's joined the TAC call once before. The only reason he's not joined the call on Tuesday is because of me. I haven't sent him the details of the invite, so sorry about that, but he'll be joining the next one. And I was just chatting with Ram from IBM. He has also confirmed that Tobin from IBM will be participating as well. So both Red and
great.
IBM support this. Yeah.
Tobin's also on the COCO project, CNCF
project,
confidential containers. So another kind of connection coming circle here.
Yeah, Tobin is also very active in the trustee project. So there's a lot of overlap here with the attestation work that's going on and workload identity. So yeah, this should be good because now we have Keylime folks, trustee folks, part of this.
Great. Open source is working. All right, so we don't have TikTok or shielded technologies present, but I mean, I think that was pretty sound set of support here. So I think the best thing to do is, now that there's a PR up there, go ahead and, if you're a TAC voting member, please approve the PR, and we're going to treat that as the vote. There's probably like grammatical nits and stuff that we can find in the charter, but we can correct those through separate PRs. I'd rather just kind of get the thing merged for its
Give me a
substance.
couple of hours to update the workload identity definition in the charter to match that of Whimsy's. Otherwise, I just need to do separate PR, more work for everyone. Just give me a couple hours.
Why don't you send us a mail to the TAC, Mark, when you want us to take a look?
I will. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Really happy to see all the collaboration. And thanks, Mark, for shepherding this through the quarter here. Actually came together pretty quickly. All right, and now our next topic. Tyler, thanks for letting us get through the trustworthy workload identity, and now it's over to you and Larry and whomever else you have along with you for the annual project review for VerTE.
Thanks. Is everybody able to hear me all right and see my screen?
Indeed.
Wonderful. So I'm Tyler. I'm also joined by Larry. We're both members of the VerTE project. And we joined about a year ago. And so this is our first annual review. And we'll go over we'll go over some of our goals when we joined and some of the progress we've made since, and we'll talk about it a little bit. So just a few of the contents. We're going over an intro of what the goals are of our project, and its short introduction, some of the milestones, some of the goals that we set when we joined, and our progress on those milestones since we have joined in the past, about almost year and a half. We'll have some give an overview of our plans for the current year, and then we'll kind of go over an annual review as such. So just an intro of who VerTE is and what our goals are. We really think of ourselves as just a repository of tools and libraries to enable the construction of TEEs. And we really focus on command line tools, a few libraries, and some attestation components. So things mostly that are common between all TEs, that we're not targeted towards one specific project. We're more so something that we hope could be used by many projects. So for instance, our libraries are used by hypervisor developers to abstract some of the common Linux APIs that are used in confidential computing. The Linux API offers different functions for SevSMP, TDX, etc. We're looking to try to kind of bring libraries together so that hypervisor projects that implement confidential computing using these APIs can have one source of one library to use, and if there's changes, they have only one place where they need to update instead of different hypervisors having their own stacks for implementing these APIs on top of Linux. We're also used by attestation developers to produce and evaluate TE evidence for trustworthiness, found in a few attestation projects as well. And some of our command line tools are used by, if there are hosts or administrators of systems that enable the CPU features that make trusted execution environments happen. We have some command line tools to help with hosts with managing that. And we also have command line tools used for guest owners that want to navigate the confidential computing environment. If they're in a TE protected guest, they can kind of help navigate that environment and get their required data and information that could be used for attestation at some point. So that's just what a few of our tools are used by. And we donated the project, like I said, I think just about January of last year. So it's been a little over a year. This is actually our first review. So some of the progression status and some of our milestones since we have joined in about a year. One of our goals last year that we said is that we wanted to support more TE architectures. When we first joined, Verti was really a joint project between, I guess it could be thought of as a joint project between Red Hat and AMD for bringing SEV SMP support, making supported libraries and tools for SEV SMP. But we expressed a desire to support other TE architectures and mimic our relationship with SEV SMP with other TE architectures. And so we wanted to support these. So some of the projects that we've started since joining, in the past year, some new projects that have been brought up were a TDX, Intel TDX Rust library. They're a same for ARM CCA. We have two new command line tools called TDX Host and TDX Guest. TDX Host, of course, is that, like I said before, that administrative environment for a TDX system from managers, administrators of it. And TDX Guest, which is used by guest owners that are having VMs in that are said to be protected by TDX, and they can verify that. They can navigate the environment. They can get attestation reports and everything, use the Linux API to make sure that they are actually running encrypted by TDX confidentiality. And the other thing that we wanted to do, we wanted to drive more adoption. So for instance, some of our libraries are adopted by libkrun and the crun container runtime project that's consumed by Podman and can be found to run confidential containers with Podman. We're also found in the confidential containers project, the CNCF project themselves. Confidential containers they use us for attestation and also bringing up new confidential VMs. We're found in the trusty attestation server to help with attestation. Also the Azure CVM tooling, we're found there, and a few other places. I just named a few. But we've seen our projects seem to be gaining adoption, so that's always good. And then our command line tools are starting, in an effort to make it easier to consume our tools, we package for operating systems. So we have all of our tools, not all of our tools, but most of them are packaged for now packaged for Red Hat Enterprise Linux, Fedora, and OpenSUSE. So we have seen more adoption of our tools. Some of the plans for the current year, what could be thought of as our growth goals, is that we want to, we have preliminary support for Intel TDX and ARM CCA, but it's not at the level that we've seen for SEV SMP yet. We're going to continue to improve on them, and so we can kind of say we support these. They're, I guess in a sense, production ready to be used for Intel TDX and ARM CCA. Of course, this space there's a lot of changes going on in Linux and the API layer to whether make, unify around making it bringing up confidential VMs less architecture specific. There's also more attestation APIs being brought into Linux. So we want to just continue to follow that and iterate and bring tools up that can help with all of that. And we also want to discuss and plan for the eventual arrival of RISC-V TE support. And we'd also just again, we continue on this goal of driving more adoption. So, we see bug fixes, we see bug reports come in, we see new features that arrive in the Linux API, and we just want to continue to drive the adoption for that. And we always invite more developers within the CCC, but lately we've seen developers and projects within the CNCF itself want to become involved. So to be able to do that, we'd like to help with that. And just for the basic questions of the annual review, just for anyone interested, we're currently in the incubation stage. Yash is our mentor. As far as our technical charter and our license scans go, they've remained unchanged. We don't have a budget allocation within the CCC right now. And the progression status, if there's some specific questions, but I've just given some of the, what we've done in the past year, how we've progressed and what we plan to do. So if there's any questions regarding this, I'm more than willing to hear them, take them. Other than that, that's about it for me. And if there's any questions.
Okay. Hey, great update. And I know this is your first one, and it's been technically about a year, but it was, I think it was even another 6 months before that it was first proposed. And then we had to kind of go through some of the paperwork challenges that slowed things down. So feels like you've been part of the family for a little bit longer than that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, questions from TAC members, particularly on the mandatory things from the progression document. I guess maybe I can kick things off. I think you said that you didn't have any expenditures like for CI or anything like that.
Yes. Not provided. We had to, for instance, we not provided by the CCC is what I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, of course, that these things are available to you as a project. I'll grab the link to the mostly full set of things, and I'm going to drop it into chat here.
Thank you. Great. I'll save. I'll make sure to save that.
One thing I could have mentioned to Oaklam as well is we have a new community architect, Haitao Wong, and Haitao will probably be reaching out to help facilitate things like blog posts, conference participation, demos to be recorded and put up on the CCC YouTube channel, things like that. Yash?
So actually, as the project liaison, that one is probably on me on not making the project more aware of the benefits. So that is something I plan to do this year better, get them to present at, say, Conference Computing Summit or the mini summit in OSS. If there are talks, and we can probably have Larry or Tyler present there. So, use the benefits available to Verti project. So, yeah.
Other questions for Tyler and Larry?
Again, it's great to see things moving ahead. I hadn't realized quite how much work Verti had been doing, and I'm also particularly pleased that you've been getting participation from other areas of the community, like CNCF. That's great to hear. I think one of the things we might want to encourage when we onboard projects, we do ask them what their plans are to increase engagement, and I wonder whether part of the template for reporting out should be, just some figures on, the variety of people who are getting involved from different organizations and those sorts of things. So, but it's really good to hear. Thank you very much indeed, Verti.
I agree with you because, it's hard. to see where we're at, because we're not a product where you could just show demos and show things. We're showing up in other projects. So that's usually behind the scenes. So others are not knowing. We know that they're using our software, but from the first glance you may not be able to tell unless you go and actually look into it. So providing those statistics and seeing where we're actually found, I do think that we could benefit from that greatly.
Great. Well, thank you very much indeed, Tyler. Really appreciate it.
All right, well, great update. And I think that was pretty complete. So thanks for putting that together.
Sure thing. Thanks for letting me discuss.
Great. Oh, and I should also say, as the Intel representative, great to see the TDX expansion on there, and with my regular TAC hat on, also seeing not just that, but ARM and AMD and the foresight for RISC-V. And we had just a little bit of chat with one of the RISC-V leaders on Slack this week, and we haven't had an update from them to the TAC in a while, and it looks like they'll plan to come in June, so that might be of interest for others who are tracking the progression of RISC-V Cove. Okay, let's switch back to the slides here, and we have a few loose ends to tie up, and then we'll get people on with their day. Put this on my screen. So emeritus stage is something that eventually all consortia like us, or all open source programs that have multiple projects, part of the natural evolution is projects kind of come through that cycle. And Veracruz is probably our first one. And one of the sensitive things about that is it's kind of hard to tell when everybody in the community is done with a project. And so if we have one maintainer saying they're done, but there's somebody else in the community that wants to carry the project forward, we want to make space to allow that to happen.
Sorry,
And so
Dan,
far,
Dan, it might just be worth mentioning what we mean by emeritus stage, because I don't think you defined it. So it's basically, as I understand it, retirement. It's saying we don't think it's being continued to be maintained, and although we're not, obviously people could take it up again, we don't expect much more work to be happening in the present. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to phrase it. And when and if we have Veracruz come through, there's more to be said about just the value of the contribution that a project still has, even when it moves on to an emeritus stage and we archive it. But for our governance process here, we don't have a lot of very prescriptive stuff. What it amounts to is there should be some public notice so that those individuals who are using the project and who might want to continue it, they have an opportunity to pick up the reins. And so there should be some very clear communication and enough time for that to happen. One of the maintainers that we have interacted with indicated that they believe the project is ready for emeritus, but they haven't followed through. And I've asked that they submit a pull request onto their own repo to make that clear. So when someone lands on Veracruz, that should be clear that this project is no longer being maintained, because there's certainly risks in depending on something that's not going to get bug fixes. So I want to see that happen, but because people move on, and if they're not going to maintain the project, they might not even do that last PR. We might end up needing to take that over. So that'll be a new process for us.
Dan, can I just ask who on the maintainers list were you interacting with? Because ARM has been a contributor into this project, right? And one of the maintainers, Derek, was out on vacation, so it's quite possible that the reason the PR has not emerged is simply because he's been out.
Okay, that would probably explain it, and that's why I didn't want to name anybody specifically, because it takes a little while for these things to work through.
Yeah, sure. So I think I can take the action to make sure that that PR gets raised. So your expectation is that the PR should be raised and merged, and basically it's just a flag at the top of the README or something. Is that the expectation?
Yeah, there should be some text at the top of the README that explains its status, and then we'll probably move the project in GitHub terms into an archive. So we archive the project. So it'll still be visible, but it should be clearly marked that this is not a maintained thing. I guess probably the PR should be merged, I guess, for the TAC to pick it up. So we know that it has gone through an approval cycle that follows the community's norms. Any other thoughts on that from others? We haven't been through this before.
I mean, what we could use is some transitioning to emeritus stage, right? Giving it 1 month for the PR to be open, or for a flag to be at the top of the README, currently transitioning to retired or to archived, so that before we actually take the action, there's like a month or something, some period for folks to speak up if they are actually thinking that this is something that is being maintained. Akin to an email, right? But if we don't really have emails for people that use open source software. So maybe a flag at the top of the README and an open PR might be good enough. And keep that open for, I don't know, what's reasonable, 1 month, 2 months, I don't know. But I mean, that's just
1
being
month is
careful.
fine.
That's not necessary, right? So
Thoughts on duration?
1 month should be enough. If that's kind of the point where if somebody hasn't noticed that it's been moving to emeritus for a month, they're probably not actively using it. So 2 months won't make that much of a difference. So yeah, 1 month is fine.
Well, and also, systems tend to flag stale dependencies, right? So if you're depending on a project that hasn't had commits for, say, 6 months or more, I think that would normally flag up in people's CI and things. So I would expect people
Yes,
would
so
already be receiving notice that they're depending on a project that doesn't seem to be getting active maintenance.
hopefully, but I think it's often the case that people are oblivious to things like that. A month seems very reasonable to me. It's also the case that any of these actions can be reverted. So if something did get prematurely moved to archive, you can unarchive a repo in GitHub pretty easily. You can do another PR to pull the text out of the README. I mean, there's probably damage that could be done if people saw that a project was closed and went away from it and never came back, if that was done prematurely, but I think that's probably a limited risk.
I totally agree. The only reason why I suggested the 1 month is that saying this is transitioning to emeritus stage, please speak up if you want to maintain it, sounds more like an open door than setting it to archive, and then people have to, I don't know, request something to contribute, right? So it feels more welcoming to have it that way, even though I don't expect it to be useful here. But at least it sounds more like I can still make a change if I read that note and I'm interested in keeping it alive.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point, Fritz.
Should we consider like some standard text for this, and actually have it as part of a recommended fragment of text that somebody could just copy and paste out of this document, for example, the project progression policy document. Say, put this banner to the top of your README if you're expecting to progress to emeritus, and then we could put that into the Veracruz README and actually merge that in, and then wait the month or however long we decide.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Okay, well, so I obviously speak to some of the maintainers regularly, so I can take the action to make sure that some text gets put into the README for now, and then maybe in a future TAC we could look at how that text is drafted and decide whether to adopt it as like a common banner text.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect plan.
Okay.
And I see Fritz dropped some suggested text in the chat there too that you might want to
Oh,
snag.
great. Yes. Okay.
And I'll add you to the
Thank you,
thread.
Fritz.
There's some suggested text in the email thread with Derek too.
Yeah, we can keep it short, right? But something like this might be, and maybe adding a deadline or something. But yeah, I agree. Would be good to have like that under the emeritus stage that Dan just showed.
Okay, so we'll plan to probably put this back on the agenda roughly a month from now. And let's take a quick peek. I don't think we have actually much planned out for the next few weeks. So next time we're going to hear a concept about a security baseline that comes from OpenSSF from Emily. Emily is Red Hat's board member and has a lot of security credentials from various projects, including the CNCF. I don't remember if it's the security SIG, but we'll be hearing from her on the security baseline and want to consider whether that becomes part of our governance structure in the CCC. And we've got a tech talk lined up as well. The rest of the tech talk schedule is pretty open. Since each of our companies is doing a lot of work here, research departments, new open source projects coming out, I would expect that any of us could help fill this out. So please reach out to Fritz with relevant topics that you can recruit from your company for that. We probably also don't have yet listed on the board all of the project updates. We now have enough projects to occupy just about every month of the year. So we'll get these listed out in order. And we have not really been tracking our OKRs, but we've been productive and busy, so that's okay. So we'll probably need to come back and look at those OKRs for like a end of quarter checkpoint. So we'll be past end of quarter by the time we have time to look at that in mid-April. So that's what the schedule holds for the next couple weeks. And just a reminder to go look at that PR for the proposed workload identity SIG. And I think that's it for today. Going once,
Thanks, Dan.
going twice. All right. See everybody in a couple weeks and constant